path of Terral, who's always had space in the midfield. Tomori making an exceptional run, but it's Irvine carrying it in and putting a third goal on the scoreboard for the Tigers. The man from down under has come up with the goods. It's now Hull City 3, Brentford 1.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me I have the man from Down Under, Jackson Irvine. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
First of all, congratulations on scoring your first goal for City. It's pretty perfect timing, scoring on the weekend and getting the winner against Brentford. It's a great feeling to be off the mark, I assume, for yourself, and then also for the team to get back to winning ways.
Yeah, of course, from a personal point of view, it's always a relief to get your first goal, but for it to come in the manner in which it did, just score the winner in a game at home is even more pleasing. But of course, yeah, the most important thing was getting the 3 points that we'd been so close to getting in recent weeks, but just failed to grab. And of course, in the new manager's first game as well, it just lifted everybody, and yeah, the vibe around the place has definitely improved.
Well, I was going to ask you about that with Nigel Adkins stepping in, with Slutsky stepping aside, much the same way as with the Socceroos, which I'll ask you about in a second. But what have you made of Nigel's start at the club and also Leonard's departure? It's obviously been quite a challenging time for the players.
Yeah, with Leonid, obviously, we were all disappointed to see him go. He was a lovely man, and as you say, for myself, from a personal point of view, he was the one that kind of pursued me to come here and signed to me and saw me as part of his plans. And it's always sad to see someone who gives you that opportunity lose their job, and more sad to see anybody lose their job. But especially when we felt the margins were so fine, we were 4 or 5 minutes away from winning or taking points in a lot of the games, and it was just as I said, fine margins that were costing us. And obviously unfortunate for him that it cost him his job. But since the new managers come in, as you say, we've only worked with him for a few days since he came in 2 days for the Brentford game, and he didn't really want to overload us with information and just try and throw everything we'd been doing out the window, and which would obviously just send everyone into a bit of confusion. So it was just about getting a few little points across, keeping us organised, and we've spent a few days this week really starting to dive into his the things he demands from his players, which is a lot more discipline and organisation in defence, because as we've shown, we've got no problem scoring goals. It's just conceding that seems to be the problem. So yeah, looking forward to getting to know the new manager and trying to adapt into his philosophies.
Yeah, you've touched on there that we have no issues scoring goals, and it's pretty incredible that at home I think we've actually scored 4 more than the next best team at home, which I think is Wolves, which is an incredible statistic. And then it's really just, as you say, those goals that we're conceding. I guess it must be hard to put your finger on what the issue is, but is there any sort of sense amongst the players what the issue is with those conceding late goals? Because it just seems to happen time and time again.
Yeah, as you say, we've scored the second most goals in the league and conceded the second most as well, I think, which is a pretty crazy statistic.
Makes for entertaining games, I suppose.
Our games, yeah, I was about to say, our games are exciting for the neutral, I imagine, but it must be torture for our fans. So we need, it's something we need to address. And, we've looked at a number of different points. I don't think there's any one, individual problem that is leading to us losing these goals. It's a combination of mentality, tactics, fitness, maybe. There's a lot of different things that can lead to losing late goals, and we've just tried to brush up on all these little things. And I think it's those 1%ers, those that moving that extra 5 yards, and maybe getting that extra little bit more fitness into us and concentration. And I think those tiny little things that we can kind of do on the training pitch will lead to those goals stopping. So, hopefully over the next few weeks we can start to see that come into effect.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And then changing track slightly, massive congratulations on an international front as well with World Cup qualification. Does it feel a little bit more real now, especially with the groups being drawn a week or so ago?
Yeah. The night in Sydney against Honduras, we kind of all, I think that's when, I think it's kind of strange. We all had these little individual points along the qualification route where it started to it just slowly starts to sink in more and more. And I think when we lost away in Japan, when they sealed their qualification, that was one of the first times that really hurt. Like,
Yeah.
with players, we were all absolutely devastated. And, that's when you start to realize that it might have been slipping away from us at that point. But we still believed that we had enough to get through into that second place at the time, or through the playoffs. And then obviously the Thailand game, 40 something shots, I think, hit the post three,
yeah.
hit the post 3 times. I don't know, just one of their defender makes 2 or 3 goal line saves. It's one of those, and that was one of those nights again where it just didn't go for us. And then we had to just knuckle down and understand that it's going to be 4, pretty massive efforts to get us through the playoffs. And we relied on a bit of magic from Timmy in Sydney against Syria, and then coming into the Honduras game, I think it was probably 2 of our most comfortable performances throughout the whole process, believe it or not. I believe away in Honduras, we were complete domination of the game. We had 3 or 4 great opportunities. The conditions didn't help. The pitch was terrible, but we would have liked to have won the game, but it put us in a good position for the home leg. And then in the home game, I didn't think they really caused us any problems until the last couple of minutes when it was, the game was kind of done and dusted. And then you just kind of have this, that kind of overwhelming emotion where you kind of realize that it's all come to an end. The most miles ever traveled by a team, the most games ever played to qualify. It was an incredible journey for everyone. And I think that's what I mean. When you realized how much it had taken and how hard the road had been to get there, it really kind of sunk in with everyone. And we had an amazing night celebrating the qualification.
I can imagine, yeah, and I'm sure everyone's seen by now those photos that you put up comparing yourself in 2005 in the stands watching the game against Uruguay, and then being pitch side for the game against Honduras. I was in the stand for the Honduras game, and the atmosphere was electric from where I was sitting, but I can only imagine what it would have felt like on the pitch.
Yeah, for sure. With those photos, it was it's, as I was saying, I was trying to describe there the kind of feelings you have going through the process of qualification and everything, and being involved in a playoff system, and just generally being involved with your national team. And I think that's why I shared those photos, because I think maybe sometimes it's easier for people to visualize how much it means to people, in terms of you can see the kind of, I think sometimes footballers can get a little bit dehumanized, I suppose, by people think that maybe we don't care as much as the fans do. But I think when they see something like that, it makes them maybe realize that we were all kind of those fans at one point, and it means just as much, if not more to us now than it did before. And it was incredible to have been there in 2005 against Uruguay. But again, it's just absolutely surreal to have been on the other side of the fence and be a part of the team, and be in the dressing room with the players. And as you say, I've played a number of games throughout the qualification process. It was just absolutely surreal.
And I guess, as you say, with supporters sometimes not realizing the emotions for the players, also in terms of the coach, because Ange has ended up standing aside after the qualification progression, and it does seem as if, to an extent, a lot of that's to do with the emotional toll it's taken on him. As a playing group, did you guys have any sense that he was planning to step aside, or was it a bit of a shock for you guys as well?
We were all shocked, and we were all obviously very disappointed. We'd built, all together with, the kind of core of players that we'd had for the last 18 months in with the manager. We'd really, obviously started to build something really positive. But of course, his family side of it and all the personal stuff that goes along with it is always going to be the most important thing. So, obviously we were disappointed to see him go, but obviously understand why he made the decision, and obviously grateful for everything he did for us during the time, and we wish him all the best. But we were very disappointed to see him go, but now we have to obviously try and stay focused and try and, as you say, it's going to depend on the new coach, and we might have to maybe adapt and make a few changes over the coming months into the World Cup. So it's going to be an interesting time for all the players in Australian football in general, but we're very interested to see where it's going to go.
And this might be a little bit of a tricky question for you to answer, but do you have any preference for the nationality of the manager coming in for Australia, whether it's a local manager in Australia or whether they go, for instance, if it's a local manager, might know the A-League a little bit better and be able to best utilize it, or do we go an international manager who might have a better sense of how to set us up at the World Cup?
Yeah, I think it needs to come down to a decision. Is it going to be a short-term manager to get us through, the next few months leading into the World Cup, or is it going to be like it was with Ange, another long-term appointment where you're looking to build something over a number of years? Because I think that will play a huge part in the who they picked it to be the next manager. But I think in terms of the short term going into a major tournament, I don't think nationality is as important as qualifications. As somebody that understands big tournaments, understands Australian players, and has a knowledge of what we're trying to do, and I think even more importantly, a knowledge of the way we've been playing over the last few years. Because we've definitely obviously we adapted with the three at the back, but the philosophy of playing out from the back all the time and trying to play that passing football and through the lines, I think we need to stay with somebody that's going to recognise the way we've been playing and maybe not just change that completely in such a short space of time. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think in terms of nationality at this point, I don't think is the most important. I think it's definitely whoever's going to be the most qualified and is going to give us a chance to get out of the group, which obviously we haven't done for since 2006.
Yeah, I do think that that's the major concern from a lot of supporters that I've spoken to, where it is that hope that now that we've sort of settled on this style, three at the back, passing sort of possession style, that we don't then move to a manager who just sort of rips that all apart and starts again.
Yep.
So fingers crossed on that front. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about when you first came to the championship with Burton Albion. And funnily enough, I was having a look at the numbers, and I'm pretty sure Burton were actually on the same amount of points this time last season as City are this season. But it would have obviously been a very different mood around the club at Burton, where no disrespect to them, it would have been more of a focus on staying up. How have you sort of compared the emotion of the two starts to the seasons for Burton and now for City?
Yeah, it's as you say, it's interesting to hear that we're on the same amount of points, considering as you say, the kind of disappointment we'd have over the last few weeks. Obviously, this week's been a bit different, but whereas at Burton we were absolutely delighted with the start we'd made, and we saw it as an absolute positive. We were absolute odds-on favourite to finish bottom of the league, and we were just out to surprise everybody last season. So it was almost like anything we achieved last year was going to be a bonus. Whereas this year, coming with a weight of expectation of being a bigger club, having high-quality players, the expectation is so much higher, and you're almost expected to win every game, which is justified when you see some of the individuals that we have. So yeah, it's interesting to be a part of that, and I think that's one of the main reasons I wanted to make a move, because I've been kind of living that underdog story for a number of years now with Ross County and Burton, and I really wanted to go to a club with expectations for play realistically playoffs and promotion. This season we're gonna have to put an amazing run together to achieve that, but in the long term, that's where the club wants to be, back in the top division, and that's the, as I was saying, that expectation, and that everyone knows that that's where we belong, so that's what we need to try and achieve.
And when you joined Burton from Ross County, you were, I believe, their record signing at the time. It sounds as if you're the sort of person that sort of thrives under that pressure scenario. How was that for you, being that sort of price tag on your head?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was obviously I'd never experienced anything like that before, especially coming into a league like this. I know in comparison to the record transfers of every other club, I think it's beyond minuscule. But as you say, in terms of Burton and the fans and the club, to have spent, I think I was only the second or third player that ever even bought in the club's history.
Wow.
Which shows the level that the club was at last year, and I suppose kind of highlights how big achievement it was to stay in the division, and in the manner in which we did it as well. So it was. It came with a pressure, but the players helped me settle extremely quickly. The fans were great with me as well, and obviously very thankful for the club for giving me my opportunity to kind of establish myself in English football.
And when you made the move initially to Scotland, it would have been a very big sort of change of scenery coming across from Australia. How was that transition for you, perhaps in terms of just the climate or in terms of expectations and pressure? Was it something that you struggled with initially, or sort of just took to like a fish to water?
Yeah, see, all that stuff kind of came easily. The football side of it, you just, going into full-time football at 16, 17 is, it's difficult for everybody. You're not used to that kind of training load of training every day. And obviously we're talking about the weather and these kind of things that came along with it. But you kind of take that in your stride at that age. It was really the kind of homesickness and being away from my family and everything. That was the stuff, especially in my first year or so, that I found really tough. But that's, as you say, only natural moving to the other side of the world and being away from home for the first time. But yeah, obviously that stuff kind of definitely makes you stronger. And had to, deal with some, as you say, poor conditions and everything. But I was fortunate enough to be at one of the biggest clubs in the world, and I loved every second of my time at Celtic. Even though, as you say, there was always going to be hard times. But yeah, no, it was definitely being away from home that was the toughest part of the move to Scotland.
And you've mentioned as well the fact that there's that sort of sense of expectation at City, that sort of pressure to perform and go out and sort of win every game. I saw an interview with Fraser Campbell recently where he was sort of comparing the two spells he's had at the club from our first promotion season to now. And he did touch on, I guess, the noise in the stands and that sort of thing. Does any of that sort of off-field drama affect the way that you play, or are you able to, when you go out on the field, to sort of shut that all out and focus on the job?
Yeah, when you cross the line, that kind of stuff all vanishes out of your mind, and it just, you just kind of settle into the game in the way it is. And obviously it's not ideal to have these kinds of things going on off the pitch, but as you say, once the players are out there, there's that's entirely out of your control. The only thing that you can control is your part in the game. So that's all everyone's focused on once we're out there.
And we've certainly got a couple of tough games coming up. First of all, against Cardiff, I think this weekend, 4:30 our time, which is going to be a bit of a challenge to stay up for, but televised, which
Yeah.
which always helps. And then I think on the 23rd over there, the morning of Boxing Day here, we've got Leeds as well. So Cardiff
hmm
sitting pretty well on the table. I think they're second at the moment, and then Leeds also having a pretty
Second, yeah.
decent season. Yeah.
Yeah, very tough. Two away games and against two of the kind of informed sides in the league. So yeah, very difficult. Cardiff and, having a great run of form, and you can as their position in the table is reflected. So we know it's going to be tough, but every game in this league is presents its own set of challenges, and you just need to prepare yourself as best you can. We'll get the information on both teams before we play them, and try and kind of paint a picture of what they're going to do in your head. But we need to focus on our own game, and keep being a threat going forward, and obviously focus on that defensive side of it, which is going to make the difference.
Well, best of luck in both of those games. It's going to be hopefully the start of a really good run of form for us now with that win against Brentford, and of course for yourself personally getting off the mark with that goal, and hopefully your run in the side continues on through the rest of the season and into a really successful World Cup campaign. So thank you for joining me, Jackson.
Thanks very much for having me. Cheers.
And the noise levels rise in expectation. Troisi with the outswinger, and it's gone in. Jackson Irvine. He nearly scored in Tehran. He has scored in Sydney. The first international goal for the young midfielder. What a start for Ange Postecoglou's team. That will steady the nerves.